Hello everybody, it's Foxy speaking, and today, on this day, the 19th of May 2022, is an important day for all of us. It is known as Winton Day. I've never really spoken about this before, but Winton Day is really should be an incredibly important day, a vitally important day for oneself to remember and never forget. It is so vitally important that everybody is aware of Winton Day, because of a special man, Sir Nicholas Winton, well, the late Sir Nicholas Winton, who was a very famous, very prominent and very useful British humanitarian who saved more than 600 Jewish children during the Second World War for those who were deemed at risk by Nazi Germany oppressing them into the execution camps, during the Second World War and the Holocaust, those who were at serious risk of it. So he managed to save more than 600 children. I think it was about 669 children he saved. Being a humanitarian, he felt that what he did was necessary and he felt it was right and he just did it. But he was criticised for doing something actually extremely vital, which I think was just wrong. It was absurd, the people who criticised him thinking he was doing something extremely wrong. And what was worse was his manager, who was probably like the male version of Cruella de Vil, in my opinion, who thought him saving Jewish children from the Nazi camps was completely not necessary at all. And all he thought about was money and expanding his business far beyond its horizon, to the point where he was just selfish about the Jewish children. Just had bags of money, all he thought about was having even more bags of money, and just letting the Jewish children suffer and die, let alone die in the Holocaust because of their religion and who they were. And anyone who criticised Nicholas Winton, thank God he gave that response. I mean, thank goodness he gave that response. He would always say, if you want a dead Jew on your household doorstep, that is your problem and not mine. That was what he would say. And they say, oh, you should not be doing things like that. That's what they said to Nicholas Winton. And in more polite terms, he said, oh, well, do you know what? Mind your own business, sir. That's what he would say. He was generally a very nice man. And a really deeply nice man, because he thought about the Jewish children who were at risk of being executed and killed because of being Jewish. And because of their religion, all thanks to the stupid Nazis, who were just grotesque. Hitler was completely grotesque, as we know, and horrible guy. Oh dear. And obviously, probably as bad as Putin, who is absolutely awful what he's doing to Ukraine, as we know. Well, the poor Ukrainians, as we know it. Which, thank goodness, those the Ukraine appeal events myself and David attended. But getting to Sir Nicholas Winton and what he did, the thing he was most notable for, which is why this video is so important, was for saving over 600 Jewish children who were at risk of being executed in Holocaust camps by the Nazis, which he did all throughout the Second World War, and was also a flight lieutenant as well as a humanitarian in the Second World War. But years and years after the Second World War, he just worked for a humanitarian society, and Nicholas Winton himself did, but he never spoke about what he did, because he thought what he did was important, but not important enough to be spreading like wildfire into wild fame or anything like that. He didn't consider it to be important enough for considerable fame. So as well as a deeply kind man, he was a deeply modest man as well. I mean, he was married and had children, but sadly one of his children died when he was only about 5. which really affected Winton greatly, which took him back to the memories of when the Jewish children were being killed or executed in the Holocaust, you know. Sorry about that. And so it wasn't until about 40 years after he was married, it was about 40 years of marriage, his wife just one day happened to go up into their loft and then just picked up all these old letters, this list of all the children Nicholas Winton had done, and she saw and she quickly learned and came to the conclusion that it was a list of him saving Jewish children from the Nazis during the Second World War. This was well over 40 years later. And because she saw this, she decided to put him on this television program, which was hosted by the successful Esther Rantzen, and in which she hosted the program she was on. I forget the name of the program she was on. This was 1988. He was on that program, and in which he got invited to come over onto the program, and the Jewish children had no idea who had saved them from being executed from the Nazis. But they were all completely grown up, some who had already retired from working service, but all these children were like in their 60s now at the time, 60s or very late 50s in 1988, at the time of the programme. And they came onto the programme where Nicholas Winton came to, where Esther Rantzen hosted, and she showed the list of all the children he'd saved, and there were actually some of the children who came as an audience to the show Esther Rantzen was hosting. They were the children Nicholas Winton had saved, obviously grown up and quite elderly. And Esther Rantzen pointed out to Vera Gissing is her name, and who was Vera Diamant as a young girl, but Vera Gissing. And Esther Rantzen pointed out that she was actually sitting next to Nicholas Winton, the man who'd saved her from Jewish Holocaust. And all the children there just greeted him with profound thankfulness. They were so thankful, but they did feel a great sense of guilt as well, because they could not thank the man, because they never found out who saved them and didn't know anything about him. But once they found out about the person who saved them from the Jewish Holocaust, they were just so thankful and paid the most profound, overwhelming respects to Nicholas Winton himself. And all that respect that they gave to Nicholas Winton himself, Nicholas actually really cried. He almost cried his eyes out, though not weeping, but he was in absolute tears for all the respect the people gave, well now grown people, but former Jewish children, but obviously grown up. He was really very emotionally tearful over that moment, and said, if anyone pays their respects to Nicholas Winton, if so, stand up please. All the audience stood up, and Nicholas Winton was the last one to stand up. He stood up about a mere 1-2 minutes later, and looked at all those people, and then he sat back down, and his face was just in tears. I mean, he was really just in tears at that moment. I mean, it was probably a little bit much for him, but he was so thankful at the same time for all the respects that were paid to him. And so therefore he made his recognition from the late 1980s onwards, and then 15 years later, in 2003, it had been about 4 years since his wife died, because she died in 1999 before he did. He received his knighthood in 2003 at the age of 94, so very old man. only receiving his knighthood by Queen Elizabeth, Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth. And then at the time of his 100th birthday in 2009, at the time, the 70th anniversary of when he started saving the Jewish children from who were at risk of being executed by the Nazi prison war camps, there was a special honorary Winton train in his honorary for his 100th birthday. And then for his 105th, he was to receive one of the highest Czech honours of all from the Czech Republic. And he did visit the Czech Republic in the latter of his life, though someone took him because he was quite immobile in the latter of his life and was wheelchaired at that point. But then, very sadly, 1 year after his 105th birthday, Nicholas Winton sadly died at the Wexham Hospital in Slough following a deterioration in his health which led to serious respiratory failure. But believe this or not, he was 106 when he died. He lived to be an astonishing 106 years of age. So he did extremely well for a man his age, living 106 years, a full and happy life. But he will never be forgotten, and his legacy will always be dragging and extending further and further into our future. He was a very, very highly respected and deeply kind and considerate man, Nicholas Winton was, for all the work he did and the courage of saving all those Jewish children from the Nazi prison of war camp. It was such a shame he could not save millions, but what he did was just one of the best things he could have done during the Second World War. No thanks to the dreadful Nazis, as we know. But there we are, that's why Winton Day is important, and that's the information about Sir Nicholas Winton. But thanks all indeed for watching. This is not quite the end of the video yet, but for those of you who... please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. There's a little something just before the ending point of this video, and thanks indeed for watching everybody. Ta-ta, another time. In special late honorary of the late Sir Nicholas Winton, an extraordinarily considerate and kind man. Thanks for watching, and ta-ta another time everybody, and happy Winton Day from Foxy.